Okay, so for introductions, I do want to introduce myself. My name is Cerise Dela Cruz. I go by she, her pronouns, and I am the current Communications and Student Advising Coordinator in the Department of Psychology. Today, I am joined by Albert Fung from the Careers and Volunteer Services. Hi, Albert. And also joined by my colleague, Dylan Kubota here. Hi, Dylan, who is the current Engagement Programming Assistant in the Department of Psychology. All three of us are going to be part of the panel tonight. And so I also wanted to go over our schedule for today. So we did our welcome. After this, I will pass it on to Albert to talk about potential career pathways and also the 5 tools to jumpstart your brainstorming process. After that, me and Dylan will also be sharing our personal career stories with you, sharing some of our insights, which we hope that you will find helpful as well. And so I will pass this on to Albert now to talk to us about Slido and to share his knowledge and tips on career brainstorming and exploration. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you, Cerise. Hello, everyone. How are we doing? So happy to see all of you. I know that is on Zoom and you can see my face, but you can't, I can't see yours, but I can feel your energy here. And so glad to be here with you. My name is Albert Fung. My pronouns are he, him, his. And like Cerise have just introduced me, I'm a career educator with the Korean Volunteer Services here at Simon Fraser University. And my portfolio focuses on supporting students within Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, which Department of Psychology is definitely part of that. Yeah, so glad, of all the things, that you can be doing this afternoon. I know you probably have assignments, classes, all the things that you can do. Of all the things that you can do, you choose to be here. So I just want to say thank you, but also a big hi to many of you who are watching on the recording, which will be recorded afterwards. And this is, and for those who are actually with us today, you will have a chance to engage and interact with us through Slido. And allow me to quickly introduce this tool. So, if you're familiar with it, or you can also scan the QR code. And Dylan, if you can be so kind to copy and paste the link and put it in the chat as well. So you can scan the QR code or go to slido.com and put in the hashtag #PsychFuture. So this is a really good way for us to get a sense of what you're thinking, to do a little bit of polls, but also give you a chance to do Q&A. So this is a completely anonymous platform, meaning that you don't have to create an account. We don't know who is the person raising that question. So when you log in, once you go to slido.com and put in the hashtag, you will see 2 tabs at the top. You will see the poll and you'll see the Q&A. So on the Q&A side, I just wanted to, perhaps show you what it looks like. Actually, without any questions, I can't show you, but you'll be able to, feel free to keep adding questions from now till we have the Q&A panel together, the 3 of us. And we'll be addressing that. But more importantly, this Q&A feature also allows you to upvote, meaning that if there is a question like this, fantastic, you can click on the thumbs up button on your end to upvote it. And of course, the more popular questions will get answers first. So hopefully that makes sense to you. So let's do a little bit of warm up. I know there are a ton of you, 66 of us together. Just wanted to get a sense of who's in the room, and where you are at. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to turn on the poll here. Where are you at with your degree? So again, instead of, answering in a specific unit, it's sort of like mindset, what you feel that you're at. Are you just started? Are you halfway through? Are you getting close to graduate or recently graduated? So as you can see, this is a live poll. So as folks are answering, we can actually see your response up here. So I'm just going to give folks a couple more seconds to answer that so you can see as a group. So if you haven't logged in yet, it's not too late to log into Slido. So thanks again, Dylan, for dropping the link on the chat there. And you can still scan both the QR code here to answer that. So yeah, wow, like overwhelmingly 41% of you are getting closer to graduate or getting close to graduate. Some of you are halfway through, but we also have folks who are recently graduated. So again, wherever you are, at the moment, hopefully you can, get some new strategies and ideas, but also get some, encouragement and support as we go. So thank you for all of you who have answered that. So the next question, I also kind of, do a little temperature check in the room, right? I feel that as we are pondering about our future, as we think about our career, I know that a lot of emotions can come up for you. Even as we speak, I want to acknowledge that you might be sort of feeling a little, tighter, feeling of something, even in your gut or something like that. And I just want to see that as a group, what are some of the ways that you describe your emotion? Again, there's no right or wrong. But I wanted to, sort of do a little bit of a word cloud together. Again, it's completely anonymous. And how the word cloud works is that the more people say the same word, the words get bigger. So I just want to take a little bit of time as you're pondering about your future. Again, some of you have recently graduated, some of you are about to graduate. Where are you at? So, and of course, I want to show you live and just to see as the words come up. So if you go to the poll section of slido.com with that hashtag, you'll be able to see that. So again, you can use a word, you can use a phrase. So it's really, really fascinating to see sort of all the emotions are on the spectrum, right? There are, anxious, there is nervous, but there's also excitement. There's inspiration, but it's also horrified. And it's really amazing, especially with a group this size, right? It's really nice to have all of you here. Is that when you look at, all these sort of different words, first of all, the first thing that comes to my mind is it's complex, meaning that it's not just about one feeling or one emotion. It's all of these sort of all together, right? And at the same time, my second observation is that if sometimes, I don't know about you, but when I sit down to talk, to talk to a student about their future, and I often ask them like, what are you going through right now? What are your emotions? And sometimes it's not uncommon for somebody to feel like, wow, like, maybe I'm the only one who is feeling anxious, or maybe I'm the only one who is feeling confused. And this is a really good exercise to see that, hey, like, if you are feeling anxious, scared, worried, nervous, confused, overwhelmed, you are not alone. You're definitely not alone, and and we're all with you. So part of that is, again, I don't want it to imagine that just by attending this workshop, all these emotions will completely evaporate or go away. But what I'm really hoping is that and also research have shown that students who have thought about their career development, or and this is not to say that they have it all figured out, but that they're engaged in thinking about it, doing research, their academic performance improve, right? And what I'm hoping is that wherever you are at this moment, along the spectrum, what we're hoping is that after this workshop, you might pick up an idea or thought or two that will sort of a little bit sort of nudge you towards the opposite direction, right? So, so yeah, thank you again for all of you who are sharing. Like, this is a beautiful word cloud. We want to let you know that you're definitely not alone. So let's talk a little bit about discover potential career pathways, because again, I know that I'm among psychology students. You might already know a thing or two, but at the same time, allow me to sort of highlight sort of the paradigm or the framework that we're talking about, which when I'm talking about the tools that to help you explore your options, it makes a lot of sense. So essentially, you can think about this whole process in sort of fundamentally two areas. The first area starts with you, right? So this is a self-awareness, self-reflection. It's about, what do you have in terms of skills, interest, passion, knowledge, but also what you want to do, and this could be something as, as grand as, the change or some of those difference you want to make in the world. But it could also be, I want to work in a place where I don't have to commute for 2 hours to work, right? Cerise and Dylan were just talking about, our commute to SFU before that, right? So this is the part about internal clarity, things about you. But on the other side of the, of the process or the framework is sort of like, what's out there, right? What are the roles that are available, in Vancouver, in BC, in Canada, in the world, right? What are those roles look like, right? And, meaning like, what are the skills that are involved? What are the experiences that are needed? What are the people that you work with? And, and this is sort of like the second part of the research. And once you have a chance to think about yourself and, and explore about the world around you, it's sort of looking at the alignment, right? The alignment of what I am, what I'm interested in doing and what are the skills and experience I want to offer. What are the roles or what are the organization that is best going to be utilized the most of what I have, and in a situation that, that I appreciate, that I enjoy. So essentially this is sort of the, overall framework. But what is really interesting is that, if there's one message that I share with psychology students is that you are more than your major, meaning that, I admit it, I've done it too, is that especially when we're in a post-secondary setting, we always even introduce ourselves as I am a blank major. I'm a psychology major, I'm a labor studies minor, I'm a linguistics major, as if this is the only thing that defines you, right? But but just think about, just take a step back for a moment, right? Of course, the education is a big part of who you are and what you do. But think about, the person you are right now is the collection of all your life experience since the day you were born, right? So think about, your hobbies, your interests, your part-time job, right? SFU has one of the highest percentage of students working part-time, either, it's because we have the most flexibility, or either our tuition is just way more expensive for just living in Vancouver, right? What about your volunteer experience? What about your involvement in a club? So all these things about who you are makes you unique. And going back to what we talked about earlier about what you have, it's not just your degree, it's not just your education, it's everything that is about you. And this is, I wanted to sort of paint this starting point to encourage that, yes, your education is the starting point, but you want to look beyond that because your options are beyond the ones that are obviously tied to your major as a psychology student. So essentially, from the internal part, or getting to know, about what you want, is essentially a few things, right? Purpose and meaning. Like, what are the areas of work that you're curious about and give you a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose? What are the skills, knowledge, and experience? Like, what are you bringing to an organization? And, and I also, I just kind of highlight that, remember to think about it holistically. But on top of that, go beyond the existing roles and organizations, right? Depending on which research that you're looking at, there are jobs that exist 20 years from now that has not even been created, right? Whether it is, whether you're in social entrepreneurship or in other ways, you could be doing work down the road that doesn't even exist yet. So even think about that. So on that note, I wanted to share with you 5 tools that can jumpstart your brainstorming in terms of looking at possibilities. So the first one I'm going to share with you, again, we have lots that we're trying to pack in this workshop. So, you might notice that I'm going through things relatively quickly. But again, I've included the link on the slides, meaning that once the workshop is over, we'll send you the slides and you can click on the resources. And Dylan will be really kind as well to copy and paste the link onto the chat. So you can, for those of you who want to follow along, you can do that. So the first tool I want to share with you is called What Can I Do with a Degree In? So basically, this is a resource that is compiled by SFU. So meaning, our team, Career and Volunteer Services. So what you need to do is go check out, and they're all organized by faculty. So obviously psychology would be under Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, and psychology, and some of you might be doing cognitive science. So but essentially, if you have only 1 minute to do this sort of research or brainstorm, this is a good place to start because it listed some of these, some of these occupational titles that are related, but also beyond that, and the ones that, require further education, right? By no means this is an exclusive list. But if you are just in the beginning stage of this research and you're like, well, I don't even know what are they called, or what are those roles called, this is actually a good place to start. And there's also some skills that are being highlighted, as well as some of the professional associations that you might want to check out. So if you only have 2 or 3 minutes, this is a really good place to start, right? So under Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, under Psych. The second tool I want to share with you is called Career Cruising. So this is actually a site that SFU students can access. This is a paid site, but basically once you click on the link, it'll give you instructions to log in. So let me quickly show you what it looks like. So basically, Career Cruising is a career occupational profile kind of database, right? So if I want to look in and say, okay, let's just be stereotypical here, counselor, right? So let's say, there are a few to choose from, and I'm curious about addiction counselors. So you can look at job description, working conditions. I mean, by no means the occupational titles exist in Career Cruising is everything that's out there. There's way more than that. But what is really interesting, I wanted to turn your attention to this section called related careers, where you might be, already aware of, this particular occupation, but you're wondering, well, what are some that are similar but different, right? So if you look down this list here, like, oh, I never knew credit counselor, very, very different, even though it says counselor, right? I think this talk about managing finance and stuff like that. But, but this gives you a chance to check out other occupations and also looking at the related careers and just to add more ideas on your radar, right? So definitely check out Career Cruising and gives you an idea of just add more occupational titles on your radar. So the third tool I want to share with you is job posting site. I kind of put a question mark and exclamation mark is kind of like, well, don't we already know about that, right? But I think for most people, we look at job posting site when we're actually applying for jobs. But in terms of brainstorming ideas for, occupation or jobs that you're curious about, it's actually also quite useful. So again, this could be Indeed, but it could be other different job posting site as well. But the idea is that, without even limiting a particular geographical location, you can look at, let's say, okay, maybe mental health assistant, and just look at all these, again, no big deal, 187, sometimes it might even be in hundreds, but the idea is that you can see the variety that exists. So if Career Cruising is a bit of the view of a forest, like a macro view, right, in terms of occupational profile, these job postings are the micro view, meaning that you can see how are all the diversity even within a title, right? So things that you can glean, right? Maybe qualifications, like, what does it take to do a job like that? Or maybe what are the responsibility? What is the role about? Or who hire these roles, right? If you look at some of these organizations, obviously the health authorities come to mind, but there are also private counseling practices that also hire roles like this, right? So instantaneously, you can tell, okay, what are the organizations that I'm more inclined to work for, right? But oops, what did I do? There we go. And another thing you'll be able to glean is the pathway, meaning that sometimes these are roles that have people that they work together with, meaning that if some of these jobs are more senior or more middle in your career, you can get a sense of like, okay, if I want to actually end up doing this role, what are some of the roles of people or occupational title that's worked with this particular role, so that I can imagine what the pathway is like. And last but not least, of course, the jargon, right? How do they talk about this particular type of role? Some of the words that they use, even, maybe to skills or certification. This is something that by gleaning from these job postings, because they're actually information from positions that they're actually doing hiring, you can actually glean a lot of information. So, never underestimate what you can glean from just looking at those job postings. The fourth tool I want to share with you is LinkedIn Alumni Finder. So again, some of you might be, thinking like, oh my goodness, I haven't even started my LinkedIn profile yet. Like, can I even use this? So what I'm about to share with you, even if you just create your account 5 minutes ago, you can do it. So once you're in LinkedIn, search for Simon Fraser University. This is, this is the account there. And under all these different tabs, there's a tab called Alumni. And you can even specify, let me just quickly show you. You can even specify, I wonder, for all the fellow psychology grads that are in front of me. So let me just highlight psychology. And let's say people who have graduated the last 10 years, right? Maybe 2013, and I hit return. So you'll be able to see all the folks who, who have graduated from psychology for the last 10 years. You will see that most of these people that come up from the search are SFU related because I work at SFU. But if I scroll further down, right, you will see a variety. So let's say, Nadine, right? Like I don't know Nadine personally, but I'm fascinated. Okay, project coordinator. I wonder how Nadine worked her way towards this particular role, right? So again, I know this sounded like we're stalking someone, but part of it is this is what LinkedIn is about. It's a relatively public information, right? You can get a sense that, oh, Nadine actually graduated with a psych and linguistic, perhaps joint major, we don't know, back in 2015. And you can kind of see, wow, this is Nadine's sort of journey, right? From, being a tutor, assistant to resource specialist. And now, Nadine is a project coordinator with the provincial health, right? So what I'm trying to say is, this is a really good way of, even though this is one person's career journey and everyone is different, but it gives you a chance to see, well, what are the different possibilities out there, right? And again, if you can even look through some of these organizations, they work in different, they work in different sectors and industry, and they even work in different, organizations. Of course, SFU show up high on mine simply because, because my connections are mostly on within SFU. So this is what's why it's listed. So check that out. Last but not least, the tool I wanted to share with you is ChatGPT. Like, again, this is something is emerging, is just happening even 2 weeks ago. I wasn't even doing this. But at the same time, for those of you who are familiar with ChatGPT, sometimes the challenge with ChatGPT is that the accuracy of information is iffy. So if you're looking for facts or historical facts or percentage, you might want to rely on that. But however, in this case, in terms of brainstorming different occupations, brainstorming different possibilities, I think ChatGPT, there's a good idea. It's actually a good place to help you jumpstart your brainstorm. So one of the things that, again, with my very limited knowledge with ChatGPT is that it's very good at synthesizing information, meaning that it's actually very good at taking one area and then another area and sort of finding sort of linkage in between. So let me just give you an example, right? So putting myself in many of your shoes, let's see, I'm about to graduate with my psychology degree. And I want to work with perhaps refugees, right? What are my career options? So what is really good, again, is that as a career educator, I might be able to answer this question personally in about 5 minutes. But ChatGPT can do that, as you see, in seconds, right? Like, again, we don't fully know if they're all 100% accurate, but if there are things like, oh, trauma specialists, wow, it actually makes sense because for a lot of refugees, they're coming from war-torn country and going through a lot of trauma. Like, oh, I never thought about that, right? So it's really interesting, in using ChatGPT to sort of jumpstart your search. But what is really critical is I keep in mind that ChatGPT is based on a large sort of database, of information. What it doesn't really know is you, right? So what it is paramount is that whatever question you ask, if you can sprinkle in, something that you want, right? So let's say, for example, right, this is good, but what are the entry? But sorry, hang on. But I am also a linguistic minor. Is it going to help me find work with refugees, something like that, right? It doesn't even have to be grammatically totally correct. So, and spelling doesn't count. That's the beauty of that. So, so again, right, like look at some of these ideas. Like, I think the more personal, not necessarily personal identifiable information, but something about you, and sort of and sort of on top of what you're asking, it actually be able to generate some really, really cool ideas. So again, on this alone, I can do a workshop on it, but I'm running out of time here. So, definitely wanted to encourage you to, try different things and take some of the information that you've gleaned from the previous four tools and kind of throw it in ChatGPT and see what, some of the idea it's given you. So towards, just before handing back off to handing back to Charisse, I just want to say that this is actually just a good start, right? But you wanted to go beyond online resources. You want to talk to people who might be doing things that you're curious about. And you definitely want to get some firsthand experience, be it volunteering, job shadowing, or even be in a place where you can see people who you want, people whose jobs that you wanted to do. Get a sense, be a fly on the wall, right? So these are all going to help you to make so much more sense about the information that you've gained online. So, without further ado, actually, just a couple more slides here, some resources for students and some resources for alumni. And then, and when you get the slides, feel free to click through these links and, just some additional resources. So I'm going to pass the time to Cerise now.
Thank you, Albert. Okay, let me just share my screen. All right. Okay, so hello again, everybody. So for this part, Dylan and I will both be sharing our own career stories and the insights that we've learned as we kind of go along in our own personal career journeys. And then we'll do this briefly, and then we'll go into our Q&A part of the event. So I'll go first. And the theme of my story is detours. Since we often use the journey or road metaphor when we talk about our career plans and our career paths, I like to call any unexpected turns detours. So again, just kind of introducing myself a little bit. Some of you may have already booked appointments with me, or maybe we've met somewhere else. My name is Cerise. I am the current Communications and Student Advising Coordinator in the Department of Psychology here at SFU. And just a reminder that this is my story and your story will be very different. There's so many factors at play. And I think that that's the point. The point is that, my story is unique. Your experiences, work experiences or otherwise, are also very unique, and you will have to form your own story and path yourself. So a bit about my career history, and I've kind of outlined that here in my slide. I graduated from SFU with a BA in linguistics and a minor in psychology. I was very interested in speech language pathology starting out because it made a lot of money. All the people who did SLP work, I saw the salary range and I was like, ooh, this is really fun. And also I felt like that subject was kind of like a marriage of arts and sciences. So because I was interested in that, I also joined the Arts Co-op program and got a job as a special education assistant, working with children with special needs. And I also did some volunteer work at SLP clinics, and I even job shadowed an SLP who was working at a hospital. And in the last few months of my co-op, I also started working as a peer academic advisor, which is a part-time student staff here within SFU. After graduation, I did some administrative roles within SFU as well, so in different departments such as admissions, academic advising, applied sciences co-op office, and then eventually ending up in academic advising again. And now I'm here. So the reason I'm talking about detours is because in my perspective, my journey goes in so many different directions, leading to different goals. And there are moments where I felt like I was, going towards a different direction and feeling lost. And there were times when I felt like I was also taking the long scenic route to my goal. And of course, there's also times where I just felt like I just completely changed the destination in my hypothetical career GPS. And there is this one main detour that I'm kind of going to be talking about that I've identified in my career journey so far. It was when I realized that I actually didn't like the SLP work. After, as I mentioned here, I did some volunteer experience. I worked in a kind of somewhat similar role where I was exposed to, people who are working in that field. I didn't find it fun or rewarding. It made me bored and even uncomfortable at times. And I realized this after doing all of that and even taking some of the prerequisites for the SLP program that I wanted to apply into. And I wouldn't have known this if I didn't get some of the work experience or exposure around that field. So if I didn't do anything about that and it just kind of lived in my head, I would find out a bit later. And if I also wasn't self-reflective enough to notice how I was feeling around these experiences, I also wouldn't have known that I actually didn't like this area. And of course, that is just, one example. And when I felt that it wasn't, when I felt that this wasn't working out for me, I thought about, okay, what is working out for me at the moment? And that was advising. And so, I thought about, okay, why did I like that? I found out that I truly enjoy working with students. I love being an educator. It's very rewarding work for me. And so I went in that direction. And so I've had other detours in my journey, but the point is that, as I say here, nobody knows really what the future entails. So I do like to focus on my values instead, my interests, and what I'm working in service of. So for me, when I was thinking about all this, I realized I love working with people. I love being in community with others and working with students and fellow educators like Albert here. And so this is currently the work for me. Yeah. And so what helps me when I feel like there is a detour? Of course, don't get me wrong. I realize that it can be difficult because, as Albert kind of previously mentioned earlier, we do attach our identities and our values to our dream job or to our majors. And so when we do change our minds, there has to be some grief that we can feel around that, because we might feel like we're not getting what we feel we deserve or what we want for ourselves. But when these things happen, I do think about these resources that are available to me as an SFU student or as an alumni. So for example, like we have career educators at SFU that you can talk to when you're reflecting about your experiences. There's also, a lot of the tools that Albert mentioned earlier. If you are trying to change your mind and you want to explore other options, you can use those tools to kind of figure out what is it that you actually enjoy. So related to this, the second point, another thing that helps me is my community. So when something unexpected happens to us or where there is a change in our lives, a lot of us think of self-care, but something that I also wanted to kind of suggest is community care. So we're not meant to navigate through every challenge alone. You are part of a community, you're part of the SFU community, alumni community. You have friends, families, and even, the random people that we talk about, even LinkedIn. So etc. And we've been so conditioned to be individualistic, but I believe we all need each other to thrive and to be prepared for the unknown, such as these detours in life. And you can call it networking, making connections. I think they're all the same thing. And the third, without the capacity to self-reflect, as I mentioned earlier, I feel like I would still be too focused on my original plan of going into SLP, and I may have missed out on other opportunities that would have been so much more exciting for me. And last but not the least, self-compassion, I think is very important about throughout this whole beautifully chaotic, messy process, because it can be a messy process. And I really encourage you to embrace that mess, especially when we think that we're making mistakes or missteps. We can be so hard on ourselves. But I think when these things happen, self-compassion is so important. And on that note, I do want to talk about I want to share this beautiful quote from one of our Faculty of Education professors here at SFU, Professor Celeste Snober. This is a book chapter that she has written called Leaning Absolutes. And if you want, you can download this from the SFU library. It is an academic piece about teaching pedagogy, but it really reads like a poetry. So the quote here, I'll just read it to you. The path, the journey, whatever metaphor one uses for the roads we take in life is filled with curves, detours, branches of eros, leading out to us in all directions. As much as we plan the curriculum of life, the book, the lesson plan, the marriage, the family, or career, they all have lives of their own. In fact, one thing is for sure, the plan will mess up and we may even be invited into a spirituality of messiness. So I'll let you sit with that. And that's all from me. And now I'll just pass it on to Dylan.
Thank you, Cerise. And thank you for sharing your journey. I really enjoyed listening to your segment.
Thank you.
I'll just have Cerise give me access to the slides.
Oh, yes, sorry.
And then I'll start my bit. I can start by introducing myself though while she's doing that. My name is Dylan. I'm the current engagement programming assistant for the Department of Psychology. I mainly assist with student engagement, event management, and media and communications. So,
Dylan, please go ahead.
okay, thank you. Let me just, the little intro. So I also just very recently finished my BA in psychology here at SFU. My convocation is next week. And a common occurrence during my undergrad was being asked by friends and family members what I was getting out of my psychology degree. So as someone who just finished their undergrad, I want to start off by touching on some of my big takeaways. So the APA actually outlines 5 goals for undergraduate psychology programs. So I wanted to use these as a jumping off point to talk about my own learning. This is more so my personal interpretation of the 5 goals. So if you're curious to learn more about them, I'll link that page later on. So goal number 1 is having a knowledge base of psychology. To me, this really means having a strong understanding of how myself and other individuals perceive and operate within the world. Number 2 is scientific inquiry and critical thinking, which I believe is the ability to engage in critical and integrative thinking and problem solving, as well as having the knowledge to engage in proper research. Number 3 is ethical and social responsibility in a diverse world. This means to me not only being able to be culturally competent, but also understanding how interactions between individuals and their environments are complex. This also includes operating under values that promote equity, inclusion, and overall well-being. Number 4 is communication. I believe I've developed strong writing and presentation skills that allow me to effectively communicate with others. I like to think of the W classes or just all the time I've spent preparing for projects and presentations. These are all experiences that have prepared me to be an effective communicator. I also think this includes being able to structure and present an argument as well. And then last is professional development, which for me, I think is taking the above 4 points and being able to apply it to a career and a workplace. I really wanted to touch on these things because I think some of what we learned during our undergrad are easy to take for granted since they become integral parts of our student life. But these are all meaningful and valuable skills that I believe I'm walking away with just from my degree alone. So on the next slide is a very rough timeline of my undergrad journey. I graduated high school really not knowing what I wanted to do with my life career-wise, and I didn't have the best grades, but I was in AP art, so I felt like my best bet at the time was to apply to art school. And so I went to Emily Carr for 2 years. I really only had skill in the fine art side of things, but I felt if I wanted to actually be employable, then I would need to become a graphic designer. So I tried my best to take design-focused courses, and I was lucky enough to get a student internship with a graphic design team. And quite frankly, I didn't enjoy it at all. So I started my second year of art school knowing that I wasn't going to be graduating from that school. I stopped taking full-time courses and I started working in reception and admin for an investment firm. And it's safe to say that as a part-time, almost dropout art school student working at an investment firm, I felt very out of place. And I felt like nothing I was doing was pushing me forward. So I knew that I needed a change, and I transferred schools and I started to study psychology. And I really enjoyed all of my classes, and I knew that it was a topic that was really intriguing to me. However, I transferred to SFU during the pandemic. So while I was happy to be studying something new, I had never been on campus as a student, and that made me feel disconnected from the university as a whole. And I wanted to get involved in extracurriculars, but given the circumstances of the pandemic, doing things at SFU was just not the first thing that came to my mind. So I started to volunteer in my community. I've had various volunteer roles over the last few years. Right now, I'm currently a peer support group moderator. And while I was doing this role, my volunteer coordinator asked me if I wanted to join the gala committee, where I was able to gain valuable skills, fundraising, and also got exposure to event planning and management. So that's a very brief overview of what I've done. But not even a year ago, I had all this experience under my belt, but I never saw a concrete career path for myself. I knew grad school in psychology or even counseling wasn't for me. I had dropped out of art school, and while I valued some of my previous jobs in the past, like my admin role, I didn't see any futures there either. And everything seemed really disconnected and random. During this time, I was really over my part-time job in retail, and I wanted something new. So I started job searching, and I started to realize that even though a lot of my experience seemed somewhat disconnected on paper, that didn't mean that it wasn't all valuable. So on the right here are the job requirements that I literally just copied and pasted from the job posting of my current role. And I wanted to highlight this because they actually draw really well upon all my past experience, whether that was from working, volunteering, or school. Many of these things I can circle back to my time as a student, such as an ability to work independently and take initiative, organizational skills, and the ability to manage multiple projects at a time, or even something as simple as strong proofreading and editing skills. Other skills listed here drew upon my design and admin background, even my volunteer roles where I got to work with people, help prepare me for this role. I guess my point here is that even though I'd previously considered my past experience random and disconnected, it actually provided me with a wide variety of skills that I'm so appreciative I can draw upon today. And there were still a handful of job requirements for this role that I didn't meet, but that's okay. I think it's less about ticking every box and more so about being able to capitalize on your past experience and apply it to the current role you're in or the role that you're interested in applying for. So I wanted to end my bit here by what I see for myself moving forward now that my degree is behind me and I'm starting to embark on my career path. First and foremost, I want to focus more on putting myself in opportunities for learning and growth as opposed to finding the perfect job. I don't think I can really know what the perfect or ideal job is, given that I'm only just graduating. I think it's an unreal expectation. Secondly, I want to start to focus more on company culture and less on my title and my day-to-day tasks. And last but not least, and this somewhat aligns with the first bullet, is that I want to explore and network. I think there's so many great opportunities to make new connections. And I think if you put yourself out there in a way that aligns with your interests, opportunities will arise. A great example of how this has already happened for me was getting exposure to fundraising and events through my volunteer role, which is very much so centered around mental health. And thank you for listening. That's my bit. And now I think we're going to move on to our Q&A portion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dylan, for your sharing. So as you mentioned, up next, we will be moving into the Q&A portion of our event. So I hope that you were able to send in the questions on the Slido, but there's time to do that. Please do so if you have any questions. Submit it there, or you can upvote the questions that you would like for us to answer. Maybe you have similar questions to some of your peers. Okay.
Yeah, and
this
Cerise, would you like me to show the questions that folks have so far? So I think, because I can share screen from my end.
Yes, absolutely. Let me stop my sharing here. Yeah.
Perfect. And thank you for many of you. We already have 11 questions and many of them have been upvoted. So yeah, let's waste no time. Shall we just dive into that
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
and keep those questions coming, keep voting for them. So let's start with this first one. I really like this one. What are some of the best jobs or experiences you can do after graduating with a bachelor's to improve an application specifically to grad school? Again, Cerise, maybe I'll start with you, putting you on the spot, being an academic advisor, but I think we all kind of, may have something to add to this question.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so it really depends. That's kind of like one of the most common answers. It really depends on the grad program that you're interested in. So if we were to talk about this in an advising appointment, I would ask you, what program are you trying to apply into, and what are the experiences that you already have? So usually a lot of us don't count some of the jobs that we've done in the past, part-time or otherwise. A lot of the time, we already have some sort of experience, and it's just a matter of continuing what you've already done or exploring other opportunities that you haven't yet explored, and something that is kind of related to the program that you're trying to get into. I'm also thinking about like the admission requirements to that grad program. So some of them will have, of course, academic requirements, but some of them may require you to do a number of hours in a certain type of job. Like for counseling, for example, they would in some of the admission requirements to some institutions, they would require you to have a number of jobs in a counseling type of role, or an advising, coaching type of role, or working with certain populations like children or adults. So that would be sort of the stuff that I will be, I would encourage you to look into if you're thinking about getting job experience specifically to improve your application to get into graduate school. Yeah.
All right, Dylan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. Yeah, definitely look at which program you're applying to, because they all do vary so much. But thinking of just like psychology grad programs, I know that you can, I think, like volunteer and still work in research labs, even if you're graduated and not enrolled in any sort of grad program, which is great experience if you're interested in psychology. I know a number of people here at SFU that are done their BA, but still are in the lab. So
Yeah.
just that.
Yeah. And I'm going to add to, completely agree with everything that Dylan and Cerise to add so far. The question I'm going to use to answer this question is, why are you interested in that particular graduate program, right? Because from a career development perspective, whether it is a counseling program or a social work or whatever program you want to be in, you want to ask yourself, okay, I'm going to, commit all these resources, time, finance, you name it, to a graduate program. Am I interested in the work that I can do with this education or with this work? So then to answer that question, I would say, you might want to actually look for experience that would allow you to explore, some of the potential of, working in the areas if you have that, if you have completed the graduate program down the road. So I just want to add a little bit of that. Use that job experience as a way to tell yourself, hey, is this something I want to do? Okay, so this is really good. So let's answer the next question. This is a really good one, and it probably has the most votes so far. What if we do not have time for clubs and extracurriculars? I have to work as much as possible while studying. Does this affect grad school applications? Again, whether it is just about grad school applications, I think this is it's a great question, because as if just getting yourself through the degree is not hard enough work. Many of you are probably working multiple part-time jobs to support yourself. Like, there's a lot going on. So Dylan, Cerise, love to hear from you. What would be your response?
Okay, so one thing that I would ask would be, what do you do for work? Because when it comes to, I assume it's about networking and other, getting more experience. think about what you already do for work and who are you working with? Because sometimes maybe you're already working in a related field and your colleagues are also connections. And of course, sometimes we forget when we think about networking, we think about going outside our network. But, you know, I would encourage you to also remember the circle that you're already in. So if maybe there's an opportunity for you to connect with a colleague who's also who's maybe in the field that you're interested in. And if maybe there are some opportunities within your work that you can do in order to help you build more skills. Again, it really depends on the grad school that you're talking about or that you're interested in. And maybe it also would entail another position that would also be more in line with what you want to do in the future and in line with the admission requirements for the program that you're interested in.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Cerise. I think maybe just adding on to that too, if you have to work, you could also look at putting yourself just in that environment, even if it's not the ideal position. I think even just being exposed to the culture of whatever industry you're interested in is also beneficial in its own way.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go back to the perspective of take good care of yourself, right? I mean, part of this journey of, you know, finishing your degree or completing your degree is that it's a marathon, right? So but when time is so scarce or limited, it means that you need to be even more intentional. Meaning, this is not to say that you have to, do a lot of research and decided on this is the one thing I want to do, but think about all the things that you're curious about, things that you are, fascinated to go into. And instead of picking 4 or 5, you might just pick the one, that you're interested. And at the end of the day, for the people who are asking, if you're still relatively earlier on in your degree, you still have time. It's not like you have to pick one club, or one volunteer and you need to stuck with it. Like, Dylan certainly shared about in the last few years, she has done a number of different volunteering capacities. So be intentional and take good care of yourself and, and manage that. So yeah, okay. Next question, 10 upvotes. This is another super popular one. Is it possible to have a stable and rewarding career without pursuing graduate studies in this field? Also, how do you know if graduate studies are for you? So this is sort of 2 questions there. Cerise, Dylan, you have a big smile on your face, Cerise. You want to take a first crack at it?
This is a very meaty question. There's a lot in here that I could address. Well, I mean, where should I start? Is it possible to have a stable and rewarding career without pursuing graduate studies in the field? Also, how do you know if graduate studies are for you? So let me just question the second part of this. Graduate studies are for you, in my opinion, if there is a problem in the field or if there's something in the field that you really want to contribute to. It's a lot of research. And if you're thinking about more into counseling, if there's a certain type of population that you really want to help. So that would be when you would go into graduate studies. And there's so many, we can talk about this in advising appointments. There's so much more factors that contribute to you, whether graduate studies is for you or not. And is it possible to have a stable and rewarding career without pursuing graduate studies? Absolutely. I think the words stable and rewarding are, it can mean a lot of different things. Stable is also something that is very interesting to me because stable for me means that there's not going to be any change and it's reliable. And something that I've learned over the pandemic is that a lot of the things we can't really control. So I like to focus on what I can control, which is, what are my skills? What are the skills that I can build on? What are the experiences that I have and experiences that I have not yet worked on? And the rewarding part is really personal to you, because what is rewarding to you will look different for others. So that is a really good opportunity to ask yourself the question, what is rewarding to you? And from there, you can kind of explore, okay, do I like working with people? Why am I doing the psychology degree? What was my intention in the beginning? And is that still in line with what I'm feeling right now? So yeah, and then we can look at different types of positions that might be a good fit to what those values and interests are that are personal to you. And again, this is going to be a very unique conversation, and there's so many possibilities, I feel. What do you think, Albert?
Yeah, forgive me for over interpreting the question. What I'm feeling is that, like, again, as a career educator, I actually have very my heart goes out to all psychology students, because sadly there's been this sort of popular saying that, oh, you have a psychology degree, does that mean that you're going to beg groceries at at a store or something like that? Like, I really I couldn't disagree with that more, right? Because first of all, it is implying some assumptions that, oh, without a graduate degree, with a BA in psychology, you can't find any work, right? But the reality is, the tools that I've shown you is actually give you a chance to explore. Yeah, who is to say that you have to have a graduate degree to actually be able to leverage your BA? Your BA actually taught you a lot of things, right? Like, I love how Dylan sort of highlighted some of the skills. But the better question is, what are the options beyond sort of the obvious sort of quote and unquote working with people, right? The sort of the stereotypical one, right? So that's why earlier on I talked about, think of yourself holistically, right? You might have, your skills and experience and knowledge that you've learned with your psychology degree. It's actually a foundation for you to open a lot of different doors, right? Think about all the jobs that require with working, not just directly working with people, but working with people in general, which is pretty much all the jobs, right? You have to communicate with people, you have to interact with people, right? So all those things, I would actually argue that a psychology degree actually gives you access to all kinds of careers, including stable and financially rewarding, and meaningful career. So again, I'm going to answer that question from the perspective of, don't believe that lie that psychology, a BA can't get you anywhere. I hated it when people say that. Sometimes I have to correct my own family members to do that, but that's another story for another day. But yeah, so I would say, do your research and explore the options. There are more opportunities and options than you probably might be on your radar right now. Yeah. And Dylan, do you want to answer that? Because I thought your story illustrated that beautifully, in a way of how all your experience add up, right?
Yeah, I'll touch on it quickly. The first part of the question, is it possible to have a stable and rewarding career without pursuing graduate studies in this field? I think we put a lot of emphasis on graduate school when you're in psychology, because that's kind of the one very clear career path that you can go down. But there are so many other options out there. You really just have to put your feelers out, and as you both were saying, to do your research. Also, how do you know if graduate studies are for you? It's great for someone if they have like a certain interest and they're really curious to learn more about a certain population or topic, because that gives you the perfect opportunity to conduct your own research and find out more. I think that's all I have to say about that question.
All right, awesome. Okay, so I'm really glad that we have this extended Q&A, and this is our intention. Talking to Dylan and Cerise, we want, because we all come from a different situation, different context. So loving all the questions, we'll get through it, and we still have 15 more minutes. So let's jump right into the next one. My resume is filled with non-psychology related work experience. Is this looked down upon? Definitely not. And I'll get Dylan to Cerise to see if you agree with me. Definitely not. So, maybe Dylan, do you want to chime in? Because what I really like about your story is that you so beautifully illustrate everything that seems so random, but not necessarily random from another person, but from your perspective. It is sort of your life experience. It was, and it shows the holistic side about you. You are an artist. you know, you're very good at graphics design, but you're also good at all the other things. So sometimes your non-psychology experience actually is sort of another way of holistically looking at who you are. So I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'd love to hear your thought on that.
No, you said that perfectly. I think too, I always had the idea that I didn't have enough depth knowledge of something, but you're still a student or you're recently graduated. You're not expected to have this deep understanding of or a deep skill set. So I think it actually shows a lot of assets if you have a wide range of skills that you can draw upon. It shows that you're also flexible and adaptable and like okay with being in different work environments. So I think it's a bonus in many ways.
Go ahead, Cerise.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree, totally agree. And a lot of the work, sometimes we do think that it's non-psychology related, but upon, you know, when we really think about it, a lot of it can be related. And again, you don't have to be tied to psychology. You're free to explore other things. Just because you're a psychology major doesn't mean you have to stick to this. You know, this is just one part of you. You can apply this to so many different areas, and this is just one part of your toolkit, so to say. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I, you know, again, I just want to encourage folks to look at yourself holistically. You know, just because you're a psychology, you know, student, kind of like Cerise said, you know, you are allowed to develop hobbies that are not related to psychology, you know, that are, you know, beyond all these different things. And so, yeah, I just wanted to echo that. So, okay, so should we move on? Should we move to the next question? It seems like this sort of topic of graduate school is really on folks' mind. So I know that we probably have covered some of that already, but maybe we'll quickly touch on that and move on to the next one. Advice on choosing the right time to join grad school, right after completing undergrad or gaining work experience. I like to think everyone is different, right, Dylan, Cerise? You know, there's no necessarily a formula, but again, this is just my take on it.
Yeah, sorry, let me just read through this again. I was responding to something. Advise on choosing the right time to join grad school, right? After completing undergrad or gaining work experience before joining post-grad. Yeah, it really depends. So yeah, it really depends. Sometimes when you might feel ready already, if you've already completed your undergraduate degree, if you feel that you have enough experiences, if you have the right academic requirements, then and you're feeling good about it and you feel that that is the right choice for yourself, then go ahead. However, sometimes we do need to take some time to reflect on our current experiences and whether this is still aligned to our interests. There is time. You don't need to go right ahead into it after graduation. Yeah, so there is time, and you know, like Albert mentioned earlier, is to be, you know, be kind to yourself. Sometimes we can kind of second guess ourselves, and you know, there is really no rush when it comes to grad school. The other thing that I would recommend is to, you know, to keep in touch with your academic references, even if you do take a break. And that is, I want to bring that back to community. So community connections, make sure you're in touch with the people that you work with, even if you do take a break and before heading into your grad school. As long as you're connected with the right people, you know, I think you can jump right back into it after some time.
Yeah,
All
and so
right.
just to
Go ahead,
add
Dylan.
quickly on that, it's not answering the question per se, but we do have a lot of resources. If you're interested in learning more about grad school, you can head over to our YouTube page where we've recorded our grad school 101 events, I think 2 or 3 times. So it's always good just to give that a watch because there's some great resources there.
All right. I think that, yeah, I think that's covered pretty well. So let's look at the next one. What advice do you have for networking if we are shy, unsure, anxious, and forgettable? Oh.
Can I answer this one?
Please, Cerise, yes.
Yes, I love this because I'm also very shy and anxious. I have social anxiety. but reframing really helps a lot because when we think about networking, it sounds very business-like, and that's like what a lot of introverts like me really don't like. If you're quiet people, you feel like you have to put up a front, you have to do a script or something like that, and it's really not you, and you feel uncomfortable, and then you're awkward. But reframing networking as building a community and being part of a community really helped me a lot because it makes me feel like I'm not focusing on myself so much. I'm doing this to become part of a community, to be part of a group, and then we can help each other out. Because when you're networking, you're not just kind of selling yourself, but you're also a resource for them. You don't dishonor yourself. You have a lot of things to offer to other people. So when you're networking, it's kind of a mutual thing. You are in this together. So if you, for example, you are working in a certain company and there's something that pops up, as a community member, that's, very caring towards your community. If there's somebody that you feel is fitted for that role, you would suggest that role to them. And the same thing happens to, when other people that you've networked with see something that's really suited for you, they send that over to you. And so that's how I think about networking now, and less of, impressing other people or being really popular, but more so, for us to succeed together, to build connection, like genuine connections and community. So I hope that helps.
Dylan, do you have anything to add?
I think Cerise said it really well. For me, I don't think I could ever go to like a networking event like made for networking. I'd feel very out of place, but just through trying new things, through volunteering has been a big one for me. You just stumble upon people, and just be yourself, be kind, and yeah.
Can I add
Yeah.
something to that? So yeah, like you mentioned, it can be intimidating to go to a networking event. However, networking doesn't have to look like that. You can also have lunch with a colleague from another place, or if somebody on LinkedIn, you stumble across somebody who is doing the kind of work that you love to do, you can go for a coffee chat with them. It's a one-on-one thing, less intimidating, hopefully that way. And that's also networking. So that's maybe something that other people can also consider.
I can talk on and on about this question alone, but I just want to say that regardless of what your personality is, do it your own way. Honoring who you are as a person. It breaks my heart to look at the word forgettable. Like, again, I don't want to over interpret, but I just want to affirm you. You have value. You're important. You have something to contribute. But in terms of answering these questions, I actually just share a link in the chat. I've actually just done a workshop on create an authentic connection, an interview and networking workshop that I've done a couple of weeks ago for all FAST students. The recording is already up. So if you have not yet have gotten sick of me, in this workshop, you want to hear more, I did sort of address that, in the workshop. But this is actually a very, very relevant question. And I also do not like the word networking. I'm more like, we're human beings. We're connecting with one another, right? So, okay. Excellent. So let's move on to the next one. As a psychology student who is not interested in counseling, but still wants to work with people, I am unsure of what career options are available to me. Can I steal this one and give it to ChatGPT? Are you able to see my screen? Because I've tried this one quite a bit, because I have actually heard this from students, and and the people who upvoted this question that proved to me that this is a real question. What is really interesting is that, like, again, even though it sounds like, well, what do you mean by you don't want to work with people? Actually, there are a lot of roles, just looking at this, are in terms of not frontline working with people, but your knowledge and understanding about human beings and how they think and how they behave would actually help you excel in some of these roles, right? Whether in HR or organizational development consultant, market research analyst, and ChatGPT is stuck in, probably with all the heavy network traffic, it just gets stuck there. But I guess what I'm trying to say there is that there are, more possibilities, out there. Again, I don't want to say ChatGPT is always going to be 100% correct, but it's definitely a lot of roles are available. And yeah, and this is a great question. So, oops, the wrong frame. There we go. Dylan, Cerise, do you have anything to add?
Dylan, do you want to? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I feel like that was kind of my question in like over the last couple of years, because I've always wanted to work with people. I'm very people oriented, but I never really saw myself being like a therapist or a psychologist. And that's why I'm so passionate about my nonprofit work, because there's so much that goes on behind the scenes for organizations that work for people. And maybe you're not working one-on-one with people, but you definitely see the effects of working like with people and whatnot. So yeah, I guess that's my input for that one.
Yeah, and to add to that, something that I would also encourage you to think about is when you say that you want to work with people, what do you mean by that? Like, what is the population that you want to work with? And do you want to work in a group? Do you want to work one-on-one? And then from there, we can figure out the type of work that can be available to you. Like Dylan said, there's one-on-one work. But then there's one-on-one work if you're uncomfortable with big groups. So there's a lot to explore in that too.
Fantastic. Okay, so this is another good one, right? What options are there if your GPA sucks? I want to put that in quotation. So I'm going to jump in and answer that first, because I know it's only fair that, you know, I have more time to think about the questions than Cerise and Dylan. One of the things I want to acknowledge is that when you're in a job search situation, unless you have like a 4.0, 4.2 GPA, whether it is 3.4, 3.3, or if you're like me, you know, you barely graduate, it actually doesn't matter. What matters the most is, you know, again, it's not just your education, it's your experience, it's your skills, it's your personality, it's all those things, right? You know, what I said is that unless you have a 4.0, 4.2, like that, you know, GPA that makes you really shine, otherwise it doesn't really matter. And again, more importantly, once you have 3 months, 6 months, a year of experience on your belt, your experience is going to be even more significant. And they'll, you know, the significance when it comes to your GPA and your grades become even less. So if you're like me, you know, your GPA is sort of borderline embarrassed, don't feel like that. You know, if you get through your degree, that already sets a lot. So that would be my my first reaction. So academic advisor, you know, will you have a different opinion?
Absolutely. I mean, I do agree. I was going to say that as well. But, you know, as an academic advisor, I'm not even allowed, if I'm allowed to say this, but like, I don't believe that the GPA is representative of anything. A
Absolutely.
lot of the time, your GPA reflects on how well you can take a test. It doesn't even reflect your knowledge of the material. So there's a lot of papers on this. And so this is what I believe, and I want to remind you that you're not your GPA. Like Albert mentioned, you're not required to disclose your GPA. What matters is the skills really that you learned in university, what you did in university, what you learned, and what are, sometimes we have group projects in our programs. You've gained people skills, presentation skills, research skills. There's so many more that you can get out of a university degree, and your GPA is one of the less, I think, important things, unless you're going to grad school, because they actually do require that. And even then, there are ways for you to still go to grad school, because you have different options. You can do a second degree, you can do a certificate, and there's other options that you can explore there. So yeah, I would focus on the skills that you have and the other experiences that you already have, rather than your GPA.
Dylan, do you have anything you would like to add?
That was well said. I don't think I have anything to add, but thank you.
Yeah. So looking at the time there, I noticed that it's 4:45, and we still have a couple of things that we want to share with you before we wrap it up officially, which means that I think, after that, I think, I think there's like probably 30 plus questions at some point. We probably get through a handful of them, 10 of them. I know some folks are still probably want some more questions answered, and, and we'll definitely try to answer that in an unofficial capacity. So we won't keep you here. We'll turn the recording off, but we'll answer a few more questions. So